What's up, people? Welcome back to week. I don't know what week is this. I have no idea. Week 9. Crazy. Week 9. Amazing. We're over the hump of this class. We are now going down. So good for you. If you have made it to this point, you have an A in the class, you have a B in the class. Great, great, great. If you have a C or below, you can still pull that grade up. Let's get them going higher. Okay. I finished grading essays. You got y'all's grades back. And I really emphasized a lot the outlines. I was really surprised that like some people who turned in good outlines did not turn in good papers. Like the paper didn't follow the outline. But the whole point of me making you an outline is so that you knew exactly what to talk about in your paper. So if you're not understanding that like all these things are connected, then I really need you to try to get on that mind frame that the things that we're doing are building on top of each other. It's not just like I'm throwing random stuff at you for no particular reason. Okay. It's all meant to make the final paper, each of your final papers, better and focused. I mean, that's the whole point of doing an outline and doing a draft. And now there was a lot of correlation between people who didn't write a draft and people who in low papers. Okay. So, again, I'm trying to make this class very simple. I think it's a very easy class. I think that I think what gets people in the most trouble with this class is not watching watching the lectures and putting time and effort. The concepts of this class is very easy. The workload compared to other classes, very easy. Also, the workload is very streamlined to work with every single, each task builds on the next. I will admit there are classes that you will take which will seem just sort of randomly. If you talk to people at other schools, at other universities, at other colleges, they might be getting, especially larger colleges like at GSU, where you have a TA, a student teacher teaching most of the 1101 classes. They're just kind of random. It's just sort of whatever. I was talking to a former student of mine from Parkview who goes to GSU, and his 1101 class is doing just sort of random stuff and like interviews, and it seems kind of just week to week. And this class is not like that. This class is designed to be building blocks. Each week we're building towards your papers. I mean, the whole class surrounds essays 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And if you are patient enough to watch the week 1 lectures and to read through the syllabus, you already know that essays 1, 2, and 3 constitute like 75% of this entire class. So of course they're going to be serious. Some people just wrote stuff and they thought that they're like, oh, I thought it was, good enough. And they were shocked when they received 60s and 50s or 10s or zeros, because what they wrote about was not what I taught or instructed. Okay. Like if you go to your place of employment and you just do whatever it is that you want to do without consulting or following what your supervisors or bosses have asked you to do, then you're probably not going to last very long, or you'll get fired or you'll get yelled at. Okay. And sure, I hate having to talk in capitalistic terms. Okay. But that is the country in which we live in, where capitalism is king. We all have to have money to survive, no matter. I mean, I majored in English. Of course, I'm very much anti-materialism, but I have to exist in a capitalist place. I have to follow guidelines here at my job. I have to follow guidelines, the standards, and teach those things. I cannot be completely out there all by myself. And so, even if I was if I worked as a independent contractor, if I have a client, let's say I'm a web designer, and the client's like, I want you to create this thing, and then I create something completely different, then more than likely the client is going to be upset and not use me again. My wife, she's a marketing director, and she hires uh, not free agents, something that's in terms of football, independent contractors to do different marketing projects for her. And if they don't produce what she asked them to do, she's not going to hire them back. So that's just sort of a standard. Okay. So in this class, I'm not just throwing random stuff at you. I'm giving you very specific instructions. All right. And if you don't follow those, then you are not going to get a participation grade. Okay. That's just the way it is. People have written back, oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was pretty good. And I'm like, you're not paying attention. And I think that some people might maybe think some of my email responses are snarky. I do get snarky if people are asking me questions that are covered in the lectures. Okay. Watching the lectures is a requirement. And I don't mind clarifying questions. Like, I'm all about, if you watch this and you're like, I still don't get this. I still don't understand this. Or can you clarify this? But some people are emailing me questions that are 100% just covered in the lecture. And then when I write back, did you watch the lecture? And then they will reply, oh, I was just about to. Or I was in the middle of it when I emailed you this. And other responses. Okay. So if you watch the lectures, which you should be doing, and you have a follow-up question, it'll be great for in the email, say, hey, listen, Mr. Byers or JB, whatever. After watching your lecture, I have this follow-up question. After watching the lecture, you said this, and I was wondering, does this work? I know you said this in the lecture, so I was wondering, can I do this? Like, phrasing questions like that, I think, is a good method to use. So that way you are communicating that you did watch the lecture, you understood the lecture, and now you have a follow-up question to ask. Okay. And those of you who did not really follow directions and you got a terrible grade on your paper, some people are asking me if they can rewrite their paper. And no, I'm not having you rewrite your paper. Okay. Because that's the thing about it, is that, look, the reason why I don't do paper rewrites after I've graded your essay is because I've done all the work to point out to you the errors. So if you just go back through and fix the errors, you're not really learning anything. You're not demonstrating to me that you've learned those concepts. You're just demonstrating to me that, like, you can take what I've told you that you did wrong and then change those things. So for now, I'm not taking paper rewrites. Okay. I want to see improvements on essay 2. If those of you who want to redo essay 1, you have to get a better and higher grade on essay 2. If your grade on essay 2 is higher than your grade on essay 1, then I will allow you to fix essay 1 and get back half the points. Okay. So if you made a 65 on essay 1, then you have to get above a 65 on SA2 to show that you have done better. And then you can redo SA1 and resubmit it with corrected, with all the corrections. And you can get half the points back. Half the points back. Okay. But like you can't just, you're not getting all the points back, and you can't just redo SA1 right now, because again, I need to see growth, not copying the errors that I pointed out, but by understanding why those are errors, and that you are able to fix those yourself. Okay. Which the only way to do that is to demonstrate that you can do those things on SA2. Okay. So as of right now, we're just focused on SA2. If you've already turned in SA1, if you turn in SA1 and you got a bad grade, now I did say that if you made below a 60, then you can rewrite, but you have to write completely. I mean, like I'm talking about like a whole new essay. Okay. All right, come on, let's get to this because we're running out of time. This week, we are covering, let's see, let me share my screen. This week, we're covering integrating quotes again, paraphrasing, parenthetical citations again, works cited page, things I've already covered. And then we'll show you some good and bad examples of those from SA1. I'm going to go over more SA1 stuff next week, but this week I'm going over these things. I'm still going to go over some, I'm also going to point out some of this stuff from SA1. Okay. So this is the PowerPoint that I went over last week, but we only emphasized the research stuff. Okay. Okay. All right. Week 9, quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. These notes are in a PDF form in the week 8 folder. Okay, quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing sources. Okay, so you got to cite your sources. You got to state, when you use a quote or an idea, you got to state who said it. You got to cite it. Quoting, I need you to quote in your papers, okay? You will have to have 2 direct quotes in paper 2. 2 direct quotes minimum from 2 different sources, okay? Quoting is using the exact words of a source within quotation marks. Well-chosen brief quotes. Some people use quotes that were just bad quotes, and you lost points. If your quote doesn't really serve any purpose in your paper and it's just there as decoration, then that's not cutting it. Your quote needs to be a quote that adds depth to your writing. Okay. And you want to make sure that it fits smoothly into what you have written, which I've given you some ways to do that in the previous lectures. And I'll go over some more today. Essentially, you're creating what's called a quotation sandwich, technical term. Okay. The statement that introduces the quote is the top slice of the bread. Then the quote is the filling of the sandwich. And then the interpretation or explanation is the bottom slice of the bread. Quote sandwich. So like here, according to Smith and Jackson, comma, quote, 1 out of 5 drivers has driven while drowsy, quote. Page number, if there is one, period. If the quote comes essentially before a comma, then you capitalize it. If there's no comma here, you don't capitalize it. This means that it is likely that we have been on the road at the same time as someone else who is too tired to drive and putting our lives in danger. Okay, so we have the lead-in phrase, the quote, and then the analysis or explanation. Now look, if you paraphrasing does not count in this paper, but if you are paraphrasing, even like you might have two direct quotes, but you also might end up be paraphrasing. If you're paraphrasing, you should still put a parenthetical citation. Okay. You have to have two direct quotes in your paper, but you can also have some paraphrasing in addition. Paraphrasing is restating what someone said, but putting in your own words, but still giving them credit. Okay. Paraphrasing is preferred over directly quoting sources because, especially if you're trying to explain something, but you still need to have a direct quote. Okay. In their research, Smith and Jackson have found out that almost 20% of people have driven while sleepy at least once in their lives. So this is citing your source, okay, Smith and Jackson, and you're still giving them credit for it. You can also do something like this. Research has found that almost 20% of people have driven while sleepy at least once in their lives. And then you just have Jackson. Okay. All right, integrating quotes, useful verbs. Use a variety of present tense verbs to introduce source material. So research conducted in 2010 found that, quote, 1 out of 5 drivers has driven while drowsy. Okay, look, if your quote comes before the word that, then you need to have a lowercase o and no comma. If your quote comes after a verb, you need to have a comma and an uppercase letter. You could also, instead of having conducted or says, have acknowledges, concedes, confirms, argues, introduces, notices, reports, writes, refutes. These are all possible ones you can have. According to research conducted in 2010, a report reports 1 out of 5 drivers has driven while drowsy. A report notices, a report argues, a report confirms, a report claims. These are all verbs. These are all verbs that can replace says or found. You can replace research conducted in 2010 argues that, quote, 1 out of 5 drivers has driven while drowsy. Research conducted in 2010 notices that, quote, 1 out of 5 drivers has driven while drowsy. Research conducted in 2010 acknowledges that 1 out of 5. Okay. So if you have a verb followed by the word that, then you have no comma, and the first letter of that quote is lowercase. If you use one of these verbs right before the quote, then you got to have a comma, and then the first letter of the quote is capitalized. Many people did that incorrectly, and they lost points. Okay, parenthetical citations. If you introduce the quote with the author's name, you don't need parenthetical citations. If you say research, though, or a group, then you got to have a parenthetical citation. So Joan Smith agrees that corporal punishment is not a legitimate form of discipline in schools. That doesn't need a parenthetical citation because the author's name is right here. If we say another researcher remarks, the researcher, this is not the author. This is a title. So if you have the title of somebody in the paper, but you don't have the actual name, you got to put the name in the parenthetical citation. I've discussed this. If the name is mentioned in the sentence, then do not include it in the parenthetical citation. If the name is not mentioned in the sentence, then include it. All right. Works cited page should be on its own page. Many people will turn in papers with the works cited page at the bottom of their page, of their essay, like below their last paragraph, their conclusion. It's incorrect. It has to be on its own. Where's my mouse? It has to be on its own page. And it says works cited, not sources used. And notice the C is capitalized. It needs to be capitalized. You are having more than one source on this works cited page for paper 2. So it needs to be alphabetical by the last name of the author. Okay. Also, Hanging indents. I've shown this several times, how to have this hanging indent. You need to do that. The first line is not indented. The subsequent lines are indented. I'll show some examples in a moment. Okay. That I don't care about. Use easybib.com. All right. So let's look at 2A papers. Joseph Stutter, not his real name. All I'm focused on right now is using quotes for this paper, for this example, okay? So I'm not reading the whole thing to you. Let's get down here. Okay. Dry lands, it's a type of workout. Let's see here. Okay, in the article, strength training, Bill Furness explains. Boom. Okay, so we're focused on this sentence. In the article, look, this is perfect. Introducing the article's name, comma, quotation mark, because articles, the titles of articles go in quotation marks. Strength training, capital letters, capital S, capital T, comma, quotation mark. Bill Furness, that's the author. Bill Furness explains. This is a verb before the quote. So explains, then we have comma, quotation mark, and capital T. Explains. The more bulk you have, the more resistance you create. The aim is to build blah, 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 blah. Period, quotation mark. This is absolutely correct. We have the title of the article in capital letters. And the first letter of each word is capitalized. It's in quotation marks. We have the author's name, the speaker. We have a verb, a comma, quotation mark, capital letter. Boom. That is correct. I think that's the only quote in this paper. Okay, go down the works cited page. It's on its own page. See that? It's not up here. Some people had it right here. No, we're not doing that. It doesn't go there. It goes on its own page. Okay. Sure, there's a little bit of space between that. I don't care. Okay. All right, we have Furness, comma, Bill, okay, period. We have the title of the article. We have the publisher. And then we have the hanging indent. Some people did their works cited page like this. Or they did sources used. This is wrong on so many ways. Even if this page was called sources used, it'd be capital U. But it's not though. It's works cited. This is not a hanging indent. First line, the last thing is all the way to the left. Second line needs to go over. But if I just hit tab, the whole thing goes over. I've already explained that. So instead, you need to go over here and hit tab. Like that. Okay. Alrighty. Next paper. Another A example. Samantha Hayes. Not her real name. Okay. Scroll down. Let's find the quote. Here's the quote being used. As Arthur C. Brooks observes in The Atlantic. Okay. So Arthur C. Brooks. Name observes in The Atlantic. Now this right here, this should be capital H. Observes, and then comma, quote. So that should be capitalized. Happiness isn't found in a single moment or achievement, but in the broader combination, blah, blah, whatever. Period, quotation mark, all right? So I know this is an A, this doesn't mean it's 100, all right? This H should be capitalized. Observes. This is not a word that. This is not that. This is this easily could have been here. Arthur Brooks in the Atlantic observes, comma, capital H. Happiness isn't found in a single moment. Put on here. Brooks, Arthur. All right. The Atlantic here, this is an error. That should be in italics. The Atlantic. All right. Now let's look at some not successful. Shaggy Bear. Shaggy Bear. There's a lot of things already wrong with this paper. I mean, there's this additional space between all the paragraphs. That should go away. 0, 0. There should be a title. Okay. Up here, the last name goes before the page number. All right, that's wrong. Okay. But whatever, let's look at the quotes here. Having a baby placed in your arms, no matter what your age, is a crazy, wonderful, terrifying experience. I wish I could tell my teenage self that okay. So this is this quote here. It's a drop quote. It's not integrated. This is a drop quote. This is a quote that's just it's just dropped. It's just dropped into the paragraph. That's incorrect. Okay. So there's no lead-in phrase. This is a sandwich without bread. Okay. There's no author is mentioned. No author is mentioned. Okay. That's an error. Is there a works cited page? Okay. So there's here. So, okay, this is also incorrect. You don't just have the citation right there. You have to bring it down to the next page. Center, works cited. These things are not suggestions. These are absolutes. This is not the right formatting. The Washington Post should be in italics. Oops. We need to have a hanging indent. So you go to the previous line, hit tab. Previous line, hit tab. Previous line, hit tab. Okay. This Jessica Watson, I guess should actually be up here. So Watson, oops, not caps. Lead in a phrase needs to be written as one teen mom expressed, quote, having a baby placed, and then Watson. Okay, so now it's correct. Battle with the Birds, here we go. In Danielle Ripley's Burgess's blog, Facing My Fear of Birds, she talked about how hard it is for her to live with such an extreme fear of birds. Period. Even as an adult, my phobia of birds continue on every time I grab it. Okay. So a couple of errors here. One, it's too long of a quote. This is too long of a quote. I don't want long quotes. We need shorter quotes. So also, this is a drop quote because we have a period here, and then we have the quote. That's a drop quote. We can't have that. This should have been fixed. You could use a colon and then turn this into a block quote. Even though I didn't teach y'all about block quotes, so I prefer if you didn't do that. But technically speaking, though, that's how you do it, though. Is how you punctuate a long quote and to not make it a drop quote. I didn't teach that because I didn't teach that because I don't want you using long quotes. It's too long of a quote, but person did though. So it was a drop quote regardless though. But a colon, you can write a complete sentence and then in the complete sentence with a colon, and then have the quote. So even if this quote, let's just say this quote ended here. Okay, let's just say for prosperity's sake. Okay, and you could do this. You can introduce a very long quote. I'm sorry, you can introduce a quote with a complete sentence by having a colon instead of the period. Okay, so that would fix that one. All right, one more bad one, and then I'll be done. All right, this one has problems because look, according to the website AZ Quotes, Addison Wilson Tover states, this is problematic. One, you do not use A to Z quotes. That itself is no, that's not a source. That's not a reliable source. Okay, that's not. You can find a quote on there, and then you go figure out where that quote came from. Kind of like how you use like Wikipedia, but you don't quote Wikipedia. You go to the source that Wikipedia used, and you cite that source. I once was editing a book, and it was filled with quotes pulled from AZ Quotes, and I just had to go find the original source. Where was that quote actually stated? Was it an article? Was it another book? Whatever. But you don't use AZ Quotes or any quote website or any quote book. You find the original source. Also here, there's a problem. We have Aiden Allison Tozer states with a verb, and then we have a quote, and then we have a capital T, the driver. What's missing is the comma. Got to have this comma right here. Comma comes after verbs. All right. And then we have the capital T. If you don't want a comma, you write states that and have it the word that, but then you have to delete this capital T and replace it with a regular T. Okay. All this stuff, with the exception maybe of the colon, I went over in the lectures. Okay. So I need to make sure that this is majorly wrong on its own page. Works cited? No. Works cited. And then this, absolutely incorrect. I mean, does this look anything like a works cited page? Nope. Okay. No. Y'all are going to lose major points if you don't take the works cited page seriously. People are like, I lost 15 points. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal. If I teach it, it's a big deal. If I teach it, you're going to lose points if you don't do it. Okay. All right, y'all. I hope this was helpful. Hope you learned something. And this week you are turning your outline into your first draft of your essay. So let's make sure that you are doing that. You're taking the outline and you are formulating paragraphs from that outline for your draft. Okay. Let me know after watching this if you have any questions, and any follow-up questions. I can help you out. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.